Last week, Norway passed a hate speech law, which could make it that in Norway, you could get thrown in jail for being a little bit too offensive. This is something that I do not agree with whatsoever. Let me explain why. But first, let's read about Norway, using this article from Reuters. They said that Norway's parliament outlawed hate speech against transgender and bisexual people last Tuesday. And as with every law, if you break it, there has to be a punishment. The government is not just asking you nicely to please be kind to people, it's going to mandate this. And so what exactly is the punishment in this case? That's where the law goes really off the rails. People found guilty of hate speech face a fine or up to a year in jail for private remarks and a maximum of 3 years in jail for public comments. Now, a little bit later, we'll look at what constitutes hate speech in Norway. But regardless of what it is, the fact that if you say something in your own home that is considered hate speech, you could go to jail for a year, or maybe you say a public comment on Twitter or Facebook, you could go to jail for 3 years. That is ridiculous. I don't know how anyone can look at that and say this is a good idea. Let's criminalize speech. What could possibly go wrong? But of course, those people do exist. Berna Rotslet, for example, who is the vice president of the Association of Transgender People in Norway, likes this idea. I'm very relieved, actually, because the lack of legal protection has been an eyesore for trans people for many, many years. And this is one of my big issues when it comes to hate speech laws and those who support them. They pretend that there is no legal protection for trans people or gay people or anyone like that. And that is certainly not true. We all have the same legal protections. Hate speech laws, however, are going one step further, which is why many of the law's opponents argued that it could criminalize free speech criticizing LGBT+ rights, which is 100% correct. That is literally what this law is doing. Now, what is considered hate speech under this new law? Well, that includes direct incitement against people or language that dehumanizes them. And that first point, I'm going to agree with. Regardless of your religion or your race, ethnicity, whatever, direct, explicit incitement of violence is against the law in the United States. And I believe it was in Norway too, even before this law was passed. However, the issue that I have is the next line, where it says language that dehumanizes them. What exactly does that mean? That's a very broad term. Who determines what is dehumanizing language? If, for example, I say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, that a trans woman is not biologically a woman, they are two very different things, is that dehumanizing language? Would that get me thrown in jail if I lived in Norway? Or if I say that letting trans women play in women's sports is unfair, would that also get me thrown in jail? If they would, and you're in favor of that, then you do not support free speech, which I would argue is one of the most fundamental rights that we have. Now, the United States is not Norway. Obviously, that's the case. And just because Norway passed this law does not mean we will in the United States as well. However, there is a growing group of people in the United States who are in favor of hate speech laws. And that is very disturbing to me. Again, there are certainly limitations to speech, but hate speech laws saying something offensive should not be one of them. And it's amusing to me that whenever the religious right has a policy position that they prefer, those on the left say that you can't legislate morality, which I would generally agree with. But then when it comes to hate speech, they are trying to do the exact same thing, legislate morality. So in case there's any doubt, I want to make sure that my position here is very clear. Hate speech laws are a bad idea. Not only that, but they're unconstitutional in the United States. So anyone who is advocating for hate speech laws either doesn't understand the Constitution or just doesn't care about the right to free speech. The government should not come in and mandate that you not say X because it could be considered offensive by someone. That's not the way it should work. All that being said, I still don't really think you should try to be a jerk to people and intentionally offend them. If someone is offended, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong necessarily, let alone anything illegal. But if you're going around trying to be offensive to people specifically, well, that's not really a good thing either. You should have the right to do it, but I don't think you should do it. There's a very big difference there. There are plenty of things that I don't think people should do, but they should have the right to do. Smoking is one of them. Smoking is a very bad habit, and you're pretty much killing yourself. However, you should have the right to do it. As long as you're not infringing on the rights of other people, go for it, do what you want. Now, maybe you disagree with me, and maybe you don't. This is just my opinion on hate speech laws and why I don't think they're a good idea. Whether it's in Norway or England or the United States, they should not be a thing. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. I'll see you next time.